Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and today I'm going to do a review of the Broken Compass supplement, Jolly Roger. If you fancy yourself a pirate or a scoundrel, well, stick around, because we be taking a trip to the high seas together. Broken Compass is a relatively new RPG that's explicitly designed for the action-adventure genre. Recently, I did a detailed review of the core book, where I said that I really liked its core dice mechanics, which are these sort of push-your-luck Yahtzee-style system that just pulls your whole table into the action. I also liked how fast it was to create characters, and while I had a few niggling issues, for example, how character advancement was a little too streamlined and the skill list was a little wonky, overall, I really liked the game. One of my favorite things about Broken Compass was that it launched with a series of supplements that really focus on some classic action genres. And this one, Jolly Roger, is the one that helps game masters run thrilling swashbucklers and pirate-style games. Now, I've written pirate adventures, I worked on a Pirates of the Caribbean video game, and recently I did a whole video on how to run a great pirate adventure. So I'm a fan of pirates and swashbuckling and The Princess Bride and all that style of action adventure. So when Broken Compass came out with Jolly Roger, I was excited to see how it would tackle one of my favorite genres. Now, I'm going to do this RPG review with an ups and downs system. So if I like something, it gets an up. And if I'm giving something the side eye, well, it's gonna get a down.
Aye, and don't forget you promised that if this book get more downs than ups, it'll swap my place in Davy Jones' locker for all eternity.
I did promise him that. All right, here we go. There are 3 sections to the Jolly Roger book. The first is an overview of the age of piracy. The second includes rules options and variations to run your pirate game. And the third section is an epic adventure. So let's go through each one. My bar for any historical section in an RPG is whether or not the author can inspire me to go write or run an adventure in that setting, or if they give me enough interesting details about that time period that I find out more about it than I could if I just looked it up on Wikipedia. Unfortunately, Jolly Roger doesn't quite hit this mark. The age of piracy was a really complex time period. Nations were always at war with each other, like constantly. Technology was advancing really fast. There was wealth being generated and transported around the world, and pirates were just right in the middle of all of this. Jolly Roger does cover all of these topics, but frankly, it just jumps around so much from topic to topic, and really fast, it just sort of gives you whiplash. There's just not enough detail in here to inspire you, and it just kind of fails my Wikipedia test. For example, there's a page here on the life of pirates, where it tells you that pirates follow the orders of their captain, and after capturing a ship as a pirate, you have to decide what to do with the enemy crew. It's just all so basic, it's not going to really inspire you as a GM. If you compare this to an older game supplement like GURPS Swashbucklers, and it's just not going to inspire you as a game master unless you're already just really into pirates. If you compare the historical overview section in Jolly Roger to older supplements like GURPS Swashbucklers, which is just full of details and trivia and adventure hooks, Jolly Roger just kind of comes up bare. So unfortunately, this kicks us off with a down.
Ah, down! One step closer to swapping its place with me.
I will, however, give this book an up for how it just takes on the slave trade head on. The slave trade of the Caribbean was just horrifying. Like the practice, the scale to millions of people, the entire thing was just mind-blowing how terrible it was. And I'm glad that this book points all of that out in a blunt way and gives some guidance for game masters on just even how to think about this in a game. When I wrote my pirate adventure, The Siren Citadel, I just really struggled to think about how to take on this part of the setting. So as a GM, I'm actually just glad this section's there. Let's move on to the rules additions in this book. There are several plugins to the core Broken Compass rules, so let's talk about some of the bigger ones. First, Jolly Roger gives players lots of new types of characters to make. There are archetypes for pirates and merchants and scum and old salts and sailors and persons of faith. More character options always is going to get an up for me. They're all great, although I will point out that some of the expertises that these characters have, these are the things that give you bonus dice if you're in a situation that matches your expertise. Well, they're sometimes uneven with each other. For example, the person of faith is an expert in religion. Well, that makes sense. And the old salt, though, is an expert at the sea, which in a pirate game, well, that's going to be a lot more useful.
It seemed to me that if you're playing a game in the age of piracy and you're getting a bonus die for every time you interact with the sea, well, that seems a little unfair, even coming from me, a pirate.
Jolly Roger also gives rules for ships, duels, gambling, and getting drunk. Yar-hey! The ship rules basically use the same fundamentals as the core Broken Compass system. Somebody on the crew declares what they're going to do with the ship, and there's various difficulties associated with that. A typical maneuver is called a clutch action, which requires 2 critical successes. 2 critical successes in Broken Compass basically means 2 3 of a kind on your dice roll. Now, obviously, in Broken Compass, rolling 2 critical successes is really hard because the average hero usually has 5 dice to roll. And if a clutch action isn't hard enough for you, you can do a daring action, which requires 3 critical successes. This is something like dropping your anchor, spinning around the enemy ship, and smashing them with a broadside of your cannon, something really epic. So, to get more dice to succeed at these really hard feats, other players can do what's called support actions ahead of that person who rolls for the clutch action. And support actions only require 1 critical success to succeed. It's sort of like a skill challenge back in Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, where every success from a support action is going to give the hero making that clutch action an extra die to roll. So let's talk about this in an example. Let's say Captain Willie wants to steer his ship through a narrow blockade. So that's going to require a clutch action, which is 2 critical successes.
I've done that maneuver like 30 times. It's hardly a thing at all. Go ahead, give it down.
So before he makes the roll, another player might decide he's going to man the sails and shout orders to the other crew to help make that tight passage. So he's going to make a support roll. And if he succeeds, he gives Captain Willie an extra die to roll. And another player may decide to inspire the crew with a speech, which if it succeeds would give Captain Willie another die. So Captain Willie can get lots of dice and hopefully make the roll to get through this blockade. This system's fairly straightforward and it works, but it does have one big downside in that it's entirely dependent on how many players you're playing with at the table. Rolling 2 critical successes is really hard, so to do that, you're going to need a big pile of dice. But if you're playing with a smaller group of players, like 2 other players or 3 other players, it's going to become almost impossible to do all the really cool stuff. And sure, you can add NPCs to make up the difference. The book even mentions that, but that's just not as much fun as players rolling to contribute to the bigger success. So overall, this lack of scalability in the ship system is going to earn this a down. But this is fixable. If I were to house roll this system, I'd actually throw a handful of dice in the middle of the table and tell the players that those dice represented their crew. Players could use those dice to help in their clutch actions, but once they were gone, well, the crew is exhausted and too tired to help anymore until they get back to port. With this system, you don't actually need lots of players at your table, and players will have to choose when to use the crew to pull off those clutch and daring actions. Overall, this would add more choice, and then over time you could upgrade your crew by hiring on better people and getting more dice. I think there's a whole missed opportunity where the system could have just used something like this. The swimming rules are pretty straightforward and reminded me of a video game. You get 8 air bubbles that are used up the more you do underwater actions. You run out, you're drowning, it works fine. It doesn't really get an up or a down. The next big set of rules is around dueling. Dueling flips one of the fundamentals of Broken Compass all around. GMs don't roll dice in Broken Compass. It's all player facing. They typically just set a difficulty and the players roll against them. But in duels, game masters do get to roll dice. Basically, the dueling system lets the fortune master roll his own dice for his bad guy versus a hero's dice, and they're comparing successes. Whoever gets more successes will get a win. Now, there's a few modifications in the dueling rules to this, like the GM can never re-roll dice unless they're going all in and want to risk losing all their successes. The GM just has more limitations when going up against the players. This system gets an up for me because, one, I get to roll dice as a game master and I love that, and two, it gives me as the GM another tool to adjust the pacing of an encounter to catch the player's attention. I think GMs should use duels sparingly because they do go a little slower than like typical combats, but it's just a great way to focus the entire table on a single combat going on. And the same dueling system can be used for like insult duels as well, which is a really nice touch. The gambling system is straight up liar's dice, which is this classic game where you roll dice and try to convince the other player that you have more dice matching than he has. It's been around for hundreds of years. This is a little weird because the rules just tell you when you want to gamble, play liar's dice. And this rule set is only for 2 players, and it doesn't cover things like card games, which were actually really popular during the age of piracy. So, sorry gambling system, you get a down for just being a 2-player minigame that crashed into my RPG. The drinking rules, though, are really fun. When your pirate partakes, you flip your fortune coin. Heads, you're drunk and feel bad and get disadvantage on things like action, knowledge, and society rolls. If you get tails, you feel great and you get advantage in things like wild and action tasks. Broken Compass works best when it's a push your luck system, and I like that the drinking system here for pirates just really does that well, where players are going to have to take a risk whether or not they get really drunk or not, and it might work out well and it might work out to be disastrous. So overall, up to the drinking system. You can tell there's a lot here, and I'm almost done with the rules additions. There's one more section on sea shanties, which actually lets your players sing a real-life sea shanty to travel from location to location. It's pretty silly. It might be fun in the right group, but I don't feel strongly enough about it to give it an up or a down, but I bet you will.
What do you mean you don't feel strongly enough to give it an up or a down? These people are here to see blood in the water, not you waffling around all indecisive like.
Jolly Roger also has a bunch of adventure hooks scattered throughout it, ranging from finding the Fountain of Youth to the search for Poseidon's trident. The book concludes with a larger 6-episode adventure, The Search for El Dorado. While I haven't run this adventure myself, it is chock full of all the things you expect from a pirate adventure. There's a legendary treasure, a map torn in half that the PCs have to recover, a siege on a fortress, and enough scum and villainy to make your players second guess who's really on their side. So overall, that adventure plus all the little adventure hooks, well, that gets an up. That said, I'm not sold on the formatting of the adventure here. The adventure is written in this screenplay format, and it's sort of like a Mad Lib where you as the game master fill in some of the details on like who the player's rival is, what their ship is called, where their secret hideout is. It just encourages you as a game master to take part in creating that world. While this sounds intriguing, in practice, it makes the entire adventure here just really tough to parse. Because you get sentences like, the player's journey to the seamy place where the rival is hot on their heels on his large vehicle. It's just really tough to read and understand. And I wonder if they should have literally made it a Mad Lib with like little lines that you could fill in just to make it more readable. While this is a fun, creative way to do an adventure, It also means that because it's so customizable, that the adventure doesn't contain any interesting characters in and of itself. You just have to make them up as a game master, and who these characters are doesn't really matter to the outcome of the adventure. Like if the PC's best friend is a drunk guy all the time, well, he's kind of covered the same way as if he was like a noble admiral. So who he is and what he is just doesn't factor into the adventure because the authors have no idea if this guy is a British governor or the drunk guy in the back of the tavern. And unlike a lot of adventures, you can't just grab this adventure and run it. You have to do that work as a game master. So I'm giving the format of this adventure a down. If it was just one or two components that I got to customize and they made a difference to the adventure, then I'd actually be thrilled with this, and this would earn like a gold doubloon up. But ultimately, the choices and the customization don't matter much, and I just wish as a game master I could read it and just like run it with my friends, since Broken Compass is really designed for that fast beer and pretzels like gameplay. Like the core book, Jolly Roger is just like beautifully done. It's really well laid out, it's full of color, the illustrations match what the text is talking about, so production design just gets a big up for me here. All right, so you can kind of tell that I'm landing on the fence with this book. I love pirates and swashbuckling, and I think the core Broken Compass system is great for that genre, but as a GM, you're going to need to do some work here, even with this book. You probably need to fiddle with the ship system, and you have to do some more research on how to run a pirate game with the information here. And even if you're using the adventure, you're going to have to customize it. But if you're already a fan of pirates and Broken Compass, then pick this book up, because just for the character options and all the rules tweaks and the adventure hooks, well, that makes it worth it if you're a fan of pirates.
Well, crap, it looks like this book be good enough to avoid my fate in Davy Jones' locker. Well, are you at least gonna tell them to like and subscribe?
Yes, listen to that guy. Real pirates like and subscribe to the videos they enjoy. So if you want to see more RPG reviews and advice videos like this one, well, go ahead and hit that button. For those of you interested in trying out Broken Compass and Jolly Roger, you can download my free adventure, The Siren Citadel, on oneshotadventures.com. It's an adventurous and fun romp on an island with duels and lost treasure and romantic opportunities and lots of social intrigue. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember...
Are you still talking? Just end the video already. Ah, mercy.